Say what you want about Deion Sanders, but he just proposed a genius change to college football that is about to change spring practice forever. He is calling for a joint scrimmage between two different teams, and I think that Nebraska is about to be involved here. So in today's video, I'm going to give you everything you need to know about this situation. What's going on? What are these joint scrimmages? Why do I think Nebraska is going to do it? The pros and the cons and everything else you need to know. So really quick, we have a lot to get into. The future of spring practice. Hit that like button if you're fired up. And also, hey, if you support what I'm doing here, daily Husker football content, March, May, April, all off season long. Nobody else is doing that, I promise you. Hey, if you're a diehard Husker fan, join this family. Hit that subscribe button. It helps me out more than you know. Once again, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, let's get into it. Talking about this revolutionary change that Deion Sanders just called for. Now, he made headlines the other day by calling for a joint practice with another college football program this spring. He said that he wants to practice against another program for a few days and then have a spring game with that team in particular. Now, right off the bat, this will not be Nebraska this year. The Huskers already have their spring in. They've already planned everything that's going to happen in 2025. However, I think that Nebraska is going to be involved in 2026 and further. So we'll get into that as the video progresses. But right off the bat, why is this a good idea? Well, there's so many benefits. Now, a spring practice, a joint spring practice is going to look like maybe 2-3 days. Another team comes to Lincoln or Nebraska travels to another state, and they compete for 2-3 days. They're doing a normal practice with another team, and then they have a scrimmage to end things off. Now, this scrimmage does not have to be televised. There does not have to be media members there, but there's so many benefits for the college football program. I just think that Nebraska is going to get involved. So what are these benefits? Well, right off the bat, if you're competing against a different team in spring practice, the number one benefit is that iron sharpens iron. When you're going up against talent, it's going to make you a better player. And when you compete against Colorado, say what you want about Colorado, they're always talented, just as talented as Nebraska. That would make Nebraska a better team if they competed against them for 2-3 days on end, with juices flowing, rivalry flowing, like they want to, show up and show out. That's going to make Nebraska and their players better. Number two, you can see how your players actually stack up against the competition. Now, you can get, an interpretation of how good your players are in practice, normal practice, but you really don't find out until they actually play in real meaningful football games. That changes when you have a joint practice with another team, because then you can actually see, okay, this is how my player stacks up against another opposing wide receiver, or this is how my offensive lineman stacks up against an opposing defensive lineman, right? It's not the same thing that you see in practice every day. So that's a huge benefit. The third benefit is that you reach a level of competitiveness that you don't normally see in practice, right? You're going up against some of your boys in practice. So obviously you're trying to put your best foot forward. You're trying to play hard. You're trying to, shine. But those are your friends on the other side of the football. So you're not going to be super competitive. You're not going to be super nasty. That changes when you have a joint practice against a team like Colorado that you desperately hate. And you want to show up and you want to show out. So there's at least a little bit of competitiveness that's going to be the best for these programs. Number four, fan interest is going to be through the roof. If Nebraska did this, we'd be reaching for nuggets every single day. How is this joint practice going? That would be huge for the fans. Number five, it'd be great for the coaches to kind of prep and scheme up against other coaches, when it comes to these practices, especially these scrimmages, just to, get an extra level of game planning, right, to practice for the actual season. Sometimes coaches need practice as well. And then number six, you're just building toughness, right? You're building resilience. You're going up against a rival team. That would be huge. And you just don't get these factors in normal practice. So there's so many benefits. The pros do this every single year. You know what's funny? Every single college, sport does this as well. College basketball does this. They do joint practices. College baseball does this. They do, exhibition games. Pretty much every sport does this besides football. I've been calling for this for a long time. I told you guys when Nebraska canceled the spring game, that this was something I wanted. Like, it doesn't have to be right away, but in the future, we should definitely do these joint practices, these scrimmages, these exhibitions with other teams like a South Dakota State, like a Colorado, like a Kansas, like a Kansas State, these regional schools, because there's so many benefits. It's way better to practice against somebody that you have no idea who you're going up against rather than play against the same guy you do every single day, right? It's better for Ja'Cory Barney to practice against a Colorado four-star DB than for him to practice up against, Jeremiah Charles every single day, right? It's better for him. It's better for him, to develop with some new talent, especially in these practices. So let's talk about it from a Nebraska perspective. Why do I think Nebraska is going to do this? We've already talked about how they're not going to do it this year because the spring schedule is always already in store. We've already scheduled everything, pretty much for the entire year. So they're not going to change that last second to do this with Colorado. But I think that it's in Nebraska's best interest to do this in 2026 and going forward, and I think that they will. Matt Rhule said that, all the time that he's very flexible, that he's always trying to change up his philosophy. He's trying to see what works. He's trying to see what sticks. He's been in the NFL. He's done these joint practices before, so he's very familiar with them. And one thing I like about Matt Rhule is that he's always adapting to the times. He's not an old school coach. And I know some of you guys want him to be old school. He's trying to be new school, and that's how he's going to be successful here. This is a new school philosophy. Okay? If you want to be flexible and you want to be new school and you want to be successful going forward, these joint practices are right down your alley. He talks about fresh eyes all the time, that he brought in Phil Snow, a defensive analyst, to have fresh eyes, to see the talent level of this team and, have a different perspective maybe that, that he didn't already have, or, some of these other coaches. This would be huge for fresh eyes because, let's say, for example, Dane Key's balling out in practice every single day and all the coaches love him. And then you go and then you do a joint practice with Colorado and maybe Dane Key does not play very well. That changes your perspective up. And that doesn't mean Dane Key's not a good player, but it changes your thoughts on him. Okay, because he's going up against a different level of competition. He's going up against players you've never seen before. And that gives you a better interpretation of what's actually going to happen on game day. Again, there's just so many benefits. In Nebraska, they're trying to get ahead of the curve on literally everything. They're trying to cancel the spring game before other programs because they understand that there's more cons than pros. This is one of those things where there's a lot more pros than cons. And at the end of the day, the NCAA, they just have no power anymore. If Nebraska wants to do this, Colorado wants to do this, it's going to happen because they're going to make it happen. The Big Ten's going to make it happen. The Big 12 is going to make it happen. So, again, there's just so many benefits. Matt Rhule, he's very, very flexible. He's very, very open. He's been in the NFL. He's done this before. I think that it's going to happen very soon. I think this is going to be the norm. Colorado might be the first to do it this year, but we're going on a 26-27. I think this is going to be a common theme where a lot of programs every year, let's say Stanford. Stanford is going to compete against Cal, or not, I shouldn't say Cal, but they might compete against the Sacramento State. Or a non-con team who's close to California or a Nevada, and they might do that for a week. Why can't Nebraska do that against Colorado or an Iowa State or a Kansas State, a team that you're not going to play in the regular season, so you don't have to worry about exposing some of your star players, but you continue to scheme them up, you continue to develop your players against different eyes, different levels of talent. So this is what I think Nebraska's going to do this, just with what Matt Rhule's been saying recently. And my proposal is this. We're scared about, these teams taking away our talent. We're scared about these teams, poaching our guys from the portal. That's fine. It does not have to be televised. Let's say you bring Iowa State down for a week or 3 days. Okay, you bring the Cyclones down, no TV, no media. You don't even have to tell the public. Okay, basketball, this is all the time. There's secret practices where the public isn't even told about it. Iowa State comes down, 3 days of practice. You enter it on Saturday. You do a little bit of the scrimmage. You evaluate your team from there. Iron Sharpens iron, you're a better team because of it. That's what you should do. And it makes the fans fired up. It adds some intrigue to the program. This is the way college football is going. Nebraska needs to get ahead of the curve here. Whether it's Colorado, Iowa State, Kansas State, I don't care. South Dakota State, I don't care. This needs to happen. This would be the best for the Huskers, especially in spring ball, but this could even happen in fall ball, early fall ball. I think this would be huge. So I really want to hear your thoughts on this. This is a controversial subject. We know that college football is changing. Take 1 minute, 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Let me know your comments down below. I want to read what you have to say. Let me know in the comment section. Hey, if you made it this far in the video, you know what to do. Hit that like button and subscribe. As always, folks, go Matt Rhule. See you in the next one.